What's up, everybody? Happy New Year. Hope everyone was able to have a wonderful holiday weekends and get to spend a lot of time with their family. I was, and just not in the ways that we would traditionally hope. With the weather changing out here, it hit us pretty hard where our allergies kicked in, and it's been a rough couple of days. So bear with me. I'm back on my feet, ready to go, and ready to bring you another video focusing today on destroyers. While I was under the weather and sitting on the couch, I rolled through some Facebook groups and seen a lot of conversation about these guys and a lot of their focus on anti-tank. It was a lot of back and forths that destroyers range, they fall apart, that they're not as good, that we need something better, doomsday arcs, and a lot of talk about that. So for myself, I've had a lot of success with regular destroyers and heavies, as it were. And I wanted to bring something together to show you some of the tactics that I use on the table with these guys to get efficiency out of them so they don't just get burnt off the table in one turn and you feel like you just lost 300 some points in a unit that didn't get to do anything, not to mention building, painting, all of that. So, with that being said, let's talk about destroyers, heavy and regular. Right here, I got a 7-man unit of destroyers, 6 of which are the regular with the heavy gauze cannon, and 1 heavy in the backfield. Now, something very unique about destroyers. Most of the units in the Necron Codex, Scorpex, Wraiths, some of the big heavy hitters, have a cap of 6 models. This one actually can go up to 7. If you look at the entry, it says you can take 3 to 6 3 to 6, 1 to 6 destroyers, and it says you can add a heavy destroyer, not replace, add. So the 7th model, the heavy destroyer, actually allows you to break through that, which is interesting for a couple of ways. Number one, reanimation protocols. When you lose a model, you get the number of wounds into your reanimation pool for your dice equal to that model's wound count. Well, with the destroyer having 4 wounds and everyone else having 3, that means every time the heavy goes down, you get 4 dice when you're rolling the reanimation protocol roll. So assuming that you lose 3 guys and one of them is the heavy, instead of rolling 9 dice like you traditionally would for a unit of destroyers, you can actually roll 10. And where that matters is you have to fill the model's wounds up each individually to be able to bring it back. So if you roll 7 5-ups, sure, bring the heavy back. You have the 4 dice there. But now you roll that extra dice and you only roll 6. Well, the heavy can't come back on the 6. You could bring the heavy back, but for 4 of your 6 dice, but then you'd only have 2 left, and then you wouldn't get a guy. However, if you go 3 and 3, you get both of your heavies back, or your regular destroyers back, leaving your heavy to wait till your turn, where your Technomancer can put them back in there, giving you that 4 wound body back into the squad. This can help with multi-damage weapons such as 3 damage weapons, where if you get hit by a couple of 3 damage shots and maybe 2 of them go through to do damage, you can have him soak up all of it, saving you destroyers. Having a heavy destroyer in a 7-man squad like this is really nice, and I've had a lot of fun with how that is all played out. With that being said, before we jump over into moving them on the table, there's one interesting little food for thought that I want to bring up to you guys when comparing a destroyer to a heavy destroyer. A lot of people jump over to the heavy destroyer because they see that 3d3 damage at the end of it. The strength 10, meaning it can wound a Hecaton land fortress on 3s, and the -4, which -4, -3, yes, the -4 obviously is better, but -3 can be just as good in most scenarios. Now we look at the damage, where the heavy destroyer does 3d3 damage, which is 3 dice. 1s and 2s are 1s, 2s and 3 and 4 is a 2, and 5 and 6 is a 3, for those who don't know. The destroyer's gun only does a single d3 damage, but the heavy is 1 shot. The regular destroyer is 3. So if both of them hit, wound, and get through, they're actually both doing the same amount of damage. Granted, the heavy is a 36-inch range versus the 24 on the destroyer, but This means that we have more dice to throw towards with the destroyers for 3 shots apiece versus the heavy. So, the food for thought that I want to bring to you is when you have more dice to toss for the destroyers, 3 dice, for example, if you fail on one or two of them and only get one through, you still get that D3 damage result. Where the heavy destroyer, if you fail with his shot at any point, that's it. You're getting 0. So it's an interesting thing to think about with when comparing the heavies and the destroyers. And I'd be glad to do a follow-up video on it. But that's one thing in the comments section. Curious on people's opinions about that. We have 3 shots that can do D3 damage versus 1 shot that can do 3D3 damage. Room for error, a lot of stuff like that. Well, now I want to get us over onto the table and show you some of the tricks and a way I like to set up a lane and a nice little triangle to cover multiple objectives. Let's take a look. Now, what I've done here is I set up the table in a deployment fashion. I'm doing a table quarters deployment and showing you a trick that I like to call setting up the lane. This is something that you can do with a lot of different armies with range, as long as you have a way to get out of your deployment zone and get into another area quick. A lot of people would be compelled to use the 6-inch pregame move, but that's not going to be quite enough to get us where we want to go today. So what we're going to do is I have the Scorpex that are in the building. Now these guys over here are actually on the bottom floor of it, but I left them up top to show where they are because they're going to matter later on for the defense. But the biggest thing is that we're looking right here. We have an objective marker in our territory, and we also have an objective marker in the center. That means that if we're trying to do Purge the Vermin or Treasure of Aeons, these 2 objective markers are pivotal for us to get points off Treasure of Aeons, and we want to be able to cover this table quarter for Purge the Vermin. So how do we do this? I think that one of the biggest auto-include relics that we have is the Veil. We don't have a lot of really great relics. The Veil is one of the best. Veil of Darkness. So, going first or going second, either way that this comes about, the way I'm going to go with this is, when it comes to my turn, in my movement phase, I'm going to move the destroyers anywhere. Just get them out of the way so the rest of my army can move. The Scorpex are going to stay there. They're going to stay on the bottom floor where they can't be shot at, waiting for the enemy to make a reaction. An 8-inch move, these guys can jump out and tear up a lot. Usually it'd probably be a 6-man in there, but we just put the 3 there for just now. So now, end of my movement phase, I'm going to trigger the Veil of Darkness, which means I can pick up the unit and place them anywhere on the table 9 inches away from the enemy. So we have 2 options. In this scenario, I'm going to play it a little defensively, so I'm going to bring these guys over here. And people are very compelled to look at the Veil of Darkness and go, how do I get into my opponent's deployment zone? How do I make this move that's going to be big and impacting and flashy and completely turn the game in my favor? I'm going to tell you, sometimes that's not the best play with the Veil. What the Veil does is it gives you that little extra. These guys have an 8-inch move, so you look at it and go, oh man, I wish I could just get, if I had a 12-inch move, I could get right there in that cover and safe for the whole game. That's what the Veil will do for you. Be able to get you in that position. It also stays in people's heads to stay back a little bit so that you can't make that big impacting jump. Now, in this scenario, we are jumping over into this piece of terrain. So we've done a couple of things here. Number one, we need to be technically 6 inches away from the wholly within 6 inches of the Technomancer who had the Veil. So in this scenario, what we've done is we've moved into the bottom floor of this room. Now, for these pieces of terrain, there is an L pointing into the middle where you can't see from. If you walk around this outside and you get over here, you can shoot inside. But with this terrain that's come from LVO and their tournaments the last year, I love the way it looks, so we just modify it. Make sure anytime, any table you go to, friends or tournament, always clarify with your friends in the TO how you're treating the terrain. For this terrain, we treat it as there is an L here, which makes this piece of it completely block line of sight, being on the bottom floor. And that's where these guys are going to be. So, what we've created here. Now, on this left side going into objective marker 1, any units such as Scarabs, Necron Warriors, anything else that may move onto this objective, if my opponent attempts to come in here and answer them, the Destroyers can move out and eliminate them. They can move into this corner, they could move directly forward and shoot at them. Wherever it may be, we've drawn a lane down here, preventing our opponent from having an easy time taking center without getting shot at. Over here, if they try and come around this way, we have two options. One, the Scorpex are there to intercept if the Destroyers need to do more work, or at that same time, we now have a lane crossed into there. The Destroyers are able to protect 3 objectives from this position off that veil. Not to mention, if you're playing on Treasure of Aeons, and they stay there and your opponent goes, you know what, I'm not going to mess with them. Leave them where they're at. Let's just let them sit there. That's 10 points on Treasure of Aeons. And probably your 15 points on Purge the Vermin. Because now they're not going to be able to cross center field because the Scorpex will charge them on the one flank and the Locust can destroy them on the other. So, what I'm saying and the point that should be in here is it's not necessarily what damage they're going to do, but what damage they can do and the threat and the presence that they bring on the field. 24-inch range isn't very much, and they're going to get answered very quickly with what they can do and how much damage they can put out. But from right here is the 24-inch mark. As you can see, right in here, I could move these guys to the second floor of this rune where they'd be able to be shot at and still put fire down on that lane. I'm able to cross well into my opponent's deployment zone, into the fact that I could even move forward and put pressure on their objectives. So which means that from this position, we're actually looking at 4 objective markers that the Locust can put a threat onto, with the Technomancer there to repair them and replace guys as we go, as well as the Scorpex to not only protect this flank, but because these guys are infantry, they can pass straight through and charge here, or, if need be, can move to here and actually pass through this rune to charge onto objective marker 1 to be able to take there. So just with these 2 units and a veil, you've created a triangle threat zone to be able to hold all 3 of those objectives down with some of the biggest, meanest units that we can bring. And in a later video, we'll go over why the Scorpex are probably the best at eliminating just about everything, and that includes things as big and mean as Imperial Knights and Hecaton land fortresses. Their damage output, there's so much to unpack there that I can't do it just in a second. Right now, Destroyers, 3 shots apiece at that strength 6 with the extermination stratagem allows you to really just be able to clear whatever you look at and whatever you touch. A lot of people are still running the Silent King. He would work very well with these guys to be able to give them the reroll hits. But in this scenario, a lord with reroll 1s is plenty enough. Actually, no, they're Destroyers. They're rerolling 1s inherently. So these guys don't even need that backing of a Lord or Overlord. I apologize. Always forget about that factor until it's late in the game. These guys, Destroyers, they reroll 1s inherently. So you're spending 2 command points just to get your reroll wounds. Might as well make it on a big brick that can answer just about anything. So this triangle is how I try to set up when I'm running a lot of Locusts, especially into objectives and missions such as this. If you look at some of the other missions that we've seen in Nephilim, you'll notice that even if you change the deployment zones to an angle, which would then save your veil, because you could deploy back in this corner over here and be able to just jump into the terrain on turn 1 or free move into it, even in those other ways, you're still looking at a lot of missions which have 5 objectives, 3 right down the middle, and 1 in your deployment zones in the same fashion. Setting up this triangle will let you get the maximum efficiency out of just those 2 units and save you a lot of points to be able to place into other things, other fun and cool units. Your Cetans, your Scarabs, Spiders, heck, throw some Annihilation Barges in there. That's one of my favorite units when I'm running the King. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know what your thoughts are. Maybe there's some other units that you'd like to hear some tactics on. If you haven't already, please like, share, subscribe. Click the bell for notifications so you can see the videos. I try to post multiple videos a week while I'm getting onto a better time schedule. Thank you guys for watching, and I hope to talk to you again soon.